today's episode, we talk a lot about the invisible role of being an adult with immigrant parents, the different roles that you play, being an interpreter, problem solver, supporter, the weight of the expectations that you have from your parents, from your family, from yourself. If you don't address these issues and are aware of them, it can be really painful. It can be really frustrating to sit with and not understand where these things are coming from. So this episode is really helpful in highlighting the areas of tension, right, as an adult with immigrant parents. Welcome back to the Empowered with Immigrant Parents podcast. I am your host, Allison Lee, and this show is all about helping you get the tips and tools that you need to help you reprogram your thoughts, because this is the only way that you can create the sustainable and supportive relationships that you want with your immigrant family, your immigrant parents, without abandoning them and without abandoning yourself, your needs, and your desires, right? So welcome. If this is your first time listening, I'm happy that you're here. Welcome back. If you are a returning listener, I'm so thankful that you are here. This episode is actually really special because I was actually interviewed by Jay Razzouk. Jay Razzouk and his wife, Wendy Razzouk, are the co-founders of ProSCALE Legal, and they're such a great team in helping coaches, helping anyone that's trying to get their own business off the ground and running, take care of the legal matters and how to navigate business and coaching. And they're just super supportive and so knowledgeable. There are a lot of consequences in not addressing these issues that I talk about on this episode with Jay, or not even addressing. Maybe even the first step is not being aware of some of these things and actually acknowledging it and validating it for you as an adult with immigrant parents, as a second gen. If you don't address these issues and are aware of them, it can be really painful. It can be really frustrating to kind of sit with and not understand where these things are coming from. So this episode is really helpful in highlighting the areas of tension, right, as an adult with immigrant parents, setting boundaries, communication. How do we actually advocate for our needs? How do we validate our perspectives without minimizing their perspective? How do we validate our parents' perspective without minimizing ours? And there's so much that we are dealing with as, second generation, meaning you were born in the country that your parents immigrated to. And there's so many cultural, challenges and just difficulty in navigating that when you are a young person, and even as an adult, when there's so many things pulling for your attention. So this episode is so helpful in increasing your awareness of what may be going on for you. So a little bit about Jay, and you'll find more about his work in the show notes and links to join the Facebook group, which is where this interview actually took place. Their Facebook group is called Business Legal Tips for Coaches, Consultants, and Practitioners. So you can join that. It is free as well. Jay Razzouk is a corporate attorney and co-founder of ProSCALE Legal with his wife, Wendy, as I mentioned. Jay and Wendy equipped coaches, influencers, and leaders with little-known legal strategies and paperwork that they didn't even know they need to scale to 7 figures and beyond with peace of mind. And I really appreciate the thoroughness and the support and the care that Jay and Wendy puts into their coaching and into their work. So I really enjoyed my time with them, working with them. I enjoyed this conversation so much. So check out this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Check out Jay Razzouk on ProSCALE Legal. And yeah, here it is.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited today to be here with a good friend of mine, Allison Lee. She is a licensed clinical social worker, but a extremely unique therapist in the sense that she specializes and works with the group known as second gens. So if you're not familiar with second gens, right, I'm talking about adults who are children of millennials children of immigrants. Like, in fact, I'm one. Like, my dad's from Lebanon, and so I'm sort of a second gen American, at least through my dad, though my mom was Native American. Native, she wasn't Native, but she and her family's been in America for centuries. So let's now talk about a little bit, Allison, about yourself. Just briefly give us a little bit more background about you. How did you get involved with serving, especially second gens, and the unique issues that they face?
Yeah, first, thanks, Jay, for having me here. It's great to be here. And yeah, so I'm a second gen myself. So my parents are from Vietnam. So that really is how I got into this because I experienced firsthand what it felt like to have some of the experiences of not having my parents speak, English and really utilizing school and the resources around me to help me get to where I am today, with two different careers and two different businesses. So I found it really important to be able to give back to my community. And I first started off working with children actually, because I felt that they needed a lot of resources and support in navigating how to help their parents while helping themselves and just like growing up. And so as I grew up myself and got older and went to school, adults also need similar help. So I expanded to working with adults who happen to be second gen because I want them to be able to live the life that they want, their best life, and still be able to give back in their families in a way that doesn't involve a lot of self-sacrifice on their end.
So why are the issues we're going to be talking about, like especially the issues of trying to balance like having your own life, your own professional life versus, being involved with your parents and taking care of them? Why is that especially a bigger issue for people who are second gens?
Yeah, so because the definition of second gen is their parents migrated from another country and second gens are born in the US, there's a lot of cultural differences, right? The fact that they had to move from one country to another, language assimilation could be difficult, where a lot of resources may be available, but may not be accessible to them because they can't speak the language or know how to access it. So it's not that they are not able to do things. Sometimes it's just sometimes the access and the language could be a huge barrier. And then the cultural piece of it is just how do we navigate holding our own traditions, our own ideas, and then trying to assimilate into this new country and feel like we're doing well or feeling, you know, accepted into this new place. And it's just a really difficult place to kind of be in this middle for second gens.
Yeah, and a lot of it probably too, right? It's just unique expectations that they're kind of caught in the middle of, right? Because let's say Americans who've been in for a long time and just the family follows traditional American values. The idea generally is okay, once kids are 18, they're kicked out of the house, they say goodbye to the parents, and maybe they get together once every year for Thanksgiving, right? So, but it's a little different usually for children of immigrants, right?
Hmm. Yeah, because even like retirement plans, how many parents, if they aren't aware or haven't been in the US very long, are able to have a retirement plan, right? So where does that burden and that responsibility fall? Sometimes it could be on the
Mm.
children, of the parents themselves too, but the sustainability of that is a lot of times on the children to support.
And you deal with parents who probably got into the country with, we all have this story of, I got into the US with like $10 in my pocket and everything I made I've given to you. And now it's like, okay, now it's all on you to take care of them in retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very difficult to be able to balance taking care of ourselves, taking care of themselves, and then also figuring out how we can still support our parents and our loved ones.
Yeah. So like if you want to have your own spouse, you want to have your own kids, you got to take care of them. You also got to do the 9 to 5, or now it seems like everybody's working longer than 9 to 5, and then trying to take care of them too, and your
Yeah.
parents. So
Hmm.
I'd love to hear about a little bit, going back in time, about your experience and some of the stories you have and lessons you learned. Like, let's go back. Like, what do you have like a good narrative that illustrates like a good lesson that you often share to your patient your clients now when you work with them, and even your coaching clients?
Yeah. There's so many, and I had to kind of think about which angle I wanted to come. And based on the title that we had today, I was thinking about basketball. So I wanted to play basketball when I was in high school. My mom did not know what basketball was, and I hardly ever played because my mom didn't know about sports and she was always like, go to school, come home. And what's important about this story in particular is that of course, when I was in high school and I wanted to play, my mom said I couldn't. And she said, hey, like let's try out. And if you try out and you make the team, then you can go ahead and join. And she was surprised that actually I made the team because I never played. And lo and behold, she made me quit, right? She was like, no,
Mhm.
this is too much. And I, as a high school kid, I was so angry and so frustrated with why can't I just play basketball? It's not like I'm doing anything like bad, right? And it was really hard for me to accept her perspective at that time. But as I got older and even throughout the years, because later the following year we came to a compromise, I was able to play, but like that and one other activity, and that's
Mhm.
it. So we got to a compromise, but the the important part was I knew I really wanted this, right? I really wanted basketball, so I fought for it. I kind of compromised with her. I talked to her about it and tried to communicate with her, even though it was super, super difficult. And as I got older, I understood her perspective a little bit more. She never had hobbies. She never played sports. She was always just work, come home, take care of your family. So that perspective taking of just thinking about what was going on for her took time for me to like dive into and really accept and also hold that same truth that it really upset me and it's okay that I was upset and I can try to debate and fight for this while respecting her perspective and still wanting my own. And I think that's a through line of a lot of the conflicts that my clients have, where how can we really be aware of what our values are, what we're willing to fight for, not fight, but verbally
Push
or
back on.
advocate for, yeah,
Yeah.
advocate for ourselves. And then also be aware that the perspective that they have could be totally different from ours. And that doesn't make ours any less true and also doesn't make theirs any less true. So that's the main thing that a lot of my clients really struggle with because they feel like oftentimes if they have a perspective and someone else doesn't agree with them, then that it's wrong. So that is really difficult to sit with sometimes.
So if you boil that down to just a short, like one sentence takeaway, what would that be?
That there can be two truths to one situation or more, and it can be hard to sit with, but we can find some middle ground that works for both parties.
Wow, amazing. So, and I love that. I mean, do you often encourage your clients to uh, really spend time to get to understand their parents' thinking too?
I do if they're in a space for it. So with the framework that I try to work with my clients is knowing themselves, know you, know why, and know how. So I think the most important part is when they understand if they're open to thinking about their parents or other people's perspective, that's great. But if they're not in that headspace, just really focusing on what they need, why they need what they need, knowing their personality, preferences, and really starting from there. Because we can't really force ourselves to start thinking about other people's perspective. Like in high school, I'm sure I did not. I was like, mom's just so mean, right? But she's not. She was just really worried and scared. But I couldn't have done that at that point in time until later, right? So it's just really listening and checking in with ourselves and really knowing ourselves and then knowing the reasons for why we want to do what we do. And then the skills of what I teach come in of like how to modify the actual tactical skills of what you want to share and why.
That's interesting when you said that fear was really the driving force behind your mother's perspective. Because I remember, like for us, when we would go stay with my Middle Eastern grandparents, times we would just hate it because my grandfather would always be, "Don't do this, don't do that," and we would joke like we'd try to climb a tree and say, "Don't fall down," and then finally one of the adults, the they weren't exactly the second gens, but they were younger when they immigrated. So so like my aunt or an uncle, they explained like, look, your grandparents, they lost a child. So like one of my father lost his brother early on, and that just ate away at my grandparents. So they're always afraid of a kid getting hurt and dying, and that was why they were the way they were. So it is, I think, important to understand. Yeah, what is that motivational force behind them?
Yeah, and a lot of those stories aren't shared, right? I think when people are in such survival mode or just trying to get by, just trying to like take care of day to day, like they don't necessarily share those stories. So we don't have that background information. And it sometimes could take us being curious to ask those questions or even potentially guess what could be going on to have that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I never ever heard my grandparents once mention this son of theirs that they had, even though we're talking about from 50, 60 years ago. Even though for my parents' generation, I guess since they were so young, they didn't have a long time to be around and it wasn't as impactful. So yeah, it's really interesting. So what's another like major experience that you tend to see second gens encounter and struggle with, and maybe illustrated by a story in your life.
Yeah, I think what I see a lot too is burnout and feeling really exhausted because they're trying to do so much. So if we think of like a juggler, if they're only really good at juggling three balls or three scarves, we tell them to start juggling four or five, they can't do it. And for my clients and even for me personally, I had a hard time asking for help because I grew up thinking I had to do everything myself. And that's something that my clients really struggle with too, where they have a hard time reaching out and accepting help from people, whether it's emotionally or
Mhm.
practically or even just like verbal emotional support, because there's this idea that like you kind of have to figure it out on your own because they also kind of grew up that way, right? If there wasn't support for them in like helping their parents, they had to do it. So they've learned that and really mastered that idea of like do it yourself. And actually for me, I think that was really difficult because when I first moved out of my parents' house, I felt super guilty. I felt like they thought I abandoned them and that like I had to come home every day after work, sitting through traffic to sit there with them just to prove that like I did not abandon them. And oftentimes I was so tired from work and an hour or so commute in LA that I was like not present, but I still showed up thinking that that made up for it, right? That oh, now they know I'm here for them, but I really wasn't. I was just like exhausted. So I really had to learn myself how to set boundaries and like it's okay that I don't show up because the next time I'm going to show up, I'm going to be more present and be there. And then I can actually ask for their help. I can help them with things. I can just be more energized in how I show up. Hey, if you found this episode or any other episodes helpful, insightful, relatable so far, get on my email list as well. This is where you would get actionable tips, relatable tools, and it's just a space where you can feel connected and have the support and tools that may be beneficial for you as you're embracing how to unlock your fullest potential as an adult with immigrant parents. So go to heyallisonlee.com/email to get on the email list, and I will talk to you there. The link will be in the show notes as well. All right, back to the episode.
And that reminds me of something I want to say about you, Allison, that I really appreciate. There's some therapists out there where I feel like, they just stare deep into your soul and are like analyzing and find out what's wrong with you. But you, on the other hand, I feel like you approach it where like most of your clients aren't, the problem isn't with them. And you're getting them to realize like, hey, you're not the problem, but here's a set of tools that are going to help you through these life experiences you're having. And I love that approach that you take.
Yeah, I think it's so empowering to see like my clients use the tools and eventually come around to like, oh, I set this boundary with my dad and we had a good time. Like I actually felt more present hanging out with them because I told him when I wanted to show up instead of just showing up when I was asked. So yeah, the tools and the skill building is like really amazing to see in practice and how that affects their mood.
So I love to hear a little bit now of like you sharing like your experience like transitioning into coaching and like what are you starting to implement now, taking from what you learned in your practice and now like building out uh, a toolkit like a course to help out anybody now, not just your clients who pay you to meet with you one on one.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I started my coaching practice, right, is that I wanted to be able to reach more people because since I'm licensed, I can only see clients in California. I knew that these tools were beneficial to my clients. So I created some frameworks and some templates around how this could be applied to anyone who may not be, in high distress that can apply these skills. And because I know it works. I've seen it with so many of my clients. I know it works with me. It just takes a little bit of having support and having the actual practice. And what's important about why I'm creating the course and the coaching in the way that I have is I think having that extra support and accountability is important because for second gens, they often hadn't had that space. Their space has been like the juggling example has been filled up by taking care of other people's needs. And when their needs are the ones that get put off to the side generally when other things are coming up because they seem more urgent for their family members or for, whatever is going on in that
Mm.
moment.
Right, go ahead. And uh, What I also love about what you do is you are, I feel like, a great example of someone who's really found a unique niche. Like, I don't know anybody else who's doing what you do, especially focusing in on the second gens. And uh, like, what maybe for those who are still trying to find their own niche, like, can you give people like some encouragement and maybe guidance of like how can you go about finding your own niche?
It's really interesting because I think the niche kind of found me since even in my therapy practice because the clients that I felt really pulled to work with were all second gens. And so sometimes it does kind of happen. So maybe it's just even noticing like what patterns are showing up in your work and what like lights you up, right? Because when I know that I've gone through something and this thing helped me and I've like overcome it and I feel like I can talk about it, I feel so energized to like talk to my clients about it and help them and know that, hey, that I'm holding on to this hope for them that it can get better in a way that they want if they're really clear on what they want, right? Or like how they want to approach it. So these tools will come in handy and it will help them um, if they just like continue to check in with themselves. So I think see what lights them up, right? People who are still trying to figure out their niche and like what comes easy to them that doesn't seem like it's actually like quote unquote work, but it actually really is, right? Because I think we tend to overlook that too when we're good at something that, oh, everyone's good at this. And I think I did that for a little while.
Yeah, no, you definitely do it better than anybody else. And when it comes to uh, like even being a sub niche, do you more subspecialize with just like Asian Americans, or do you find that really your principles just work across the board for any type of second gen? Again, like for me, let's say son of Middle Eastern American.
The skills that I share apply to anyone, but I think because I'm also Asian American and I have a little bit more of the cultural understanding of the factors that make it more difficult for people to set boundaries, share their feelings, and really start to like live more of the life that they want. I attract more Asian Americans, but I do have clients who are not. Um, but I think the skills are universal. It's like about just really, again, knowing you, knowing why, and knowing how to do what you want to do. And what I find really important is that I want to help clients feel confident and know that confidence doesn't have to look like the universal confidence either of like being boisterous, being loud, taking up a bunch of space. Sometimes it's really having that confidence of like knowing what we're doing, why we're doing it. And even if other people don't agree or don't really know, like we feel good about what we do. So that's a universal thing that all humans can, I think, benefit from.
Yeah, it definitely intrigues me the universal experiences that we have as people. And when it comes to uh, like you've been going on doing podcasts and things like that. Have you found yourself resonating, especially too, like with those guests? And do you have like any credible stories where it turns out like, oh wow, I could totally relate now to Allison?
Yeah, I've had podcast hosts who share that even though they're not second gen, like my repay cycle framework and the things that I talk about resonates with them. And they're also actually, dealing with different conflicts within their family, not being a second gen and, thinking about how to really focus on themselves and seeing where their value lies has been helpful when we talk about it during
Mhm.
our conversations to remind them that like they can also really like do what they need to do even if other people don't agree.
So so today's theme, we were talking about like someone who's feeling, let's say, lonely, overwhelmed, and you know, not living up to parental expectations, and trying to take care of the parents. Let's say, how how else would you go about trying to like, or what other piece of advice would you have for someone in that sort of boat?
Yeah, for anyone that's feeling like they're failing someone, right? I think it kind of comes down to, and even themselves, if they're feeling overwhelmed or feeling lonely, there's some sense of failing in either how they're showing up or in a relationship, right? And with another person, there might be some discrepancy in how they want to be supported and how they want to be viewed, how they want to be taken care of. So I think it still boils down to like communication. What is not being said or not being done that we really need. And I think, again, knowing you and knowing what we need, knowing our own preferences is so, so important so that we can take actions to decrease some of that loneliness. And it may not always be that people would meet our needs all the time, but if what's within our control that we can take action on to relieve some of that. And that starts with knowing ourselves and communicating. Um, and really looking at what failing like means, right? Like if we're feeling
Mhm.
like we're failing people or not doing a good job at something, again, going back to that perspective taking with that basketball story, like what are they saying? What is actually going on with them that's leading us to um, have this experience, and what is going on with us to kind of like come to that middle ground?
I had a question. Oh, got it. Yeah. So, what have you seen any like long-term consequences in people? Like, if they're not dealing with these issues right away, like, what does this start manifesting into? Like, do the problems get worse and worse, and what happens over time? Again, like, yeah, what happens if they don't deal with this stuff promptly?
Yeah. So if we continue to not share, not really think about what we're needing or take care of ourselves, our relationships really are the cost, right? Like we end up thinking we have to cut our ties with people that we know or end relationships because that's easier, right? We fall into this thought of like all or nothing, where either this person meets all my needs, or if they don't and I'm feeling really exhausted, I'm just going to cut them out. But really with my clients especially, they don't want to cut out their families. That isn't the preference, but sometimes they have to get to that point if they don't take care of themselves. So a problem that I see is if they aren't thinking of the long-term game, they start just continuing the patterns that they're doing and they end up feeling burnt out, feeling exhausted, feeling really overwhelmed, and yeah, feeling very lonely and not feeling supported. So they end up wanting to cut out the people that they actually love the most, which ends up making them feel more lonely and more isolated. So it's a
Wow.
vicious cycle.
This is actually really intriguing to me because I guess I've always had the perspective that putting in place boundaries might be more of a sign of failure and isolating and all that. But it's interesting your perspective where you're saying that if someone doesn't start doing some line drawing, then you end up in the extreme situation where you're completely cutting off the relationship. I've never thought about it in those terms. And that's in order to
Yeah.
save the relationship, you got to put in a certain level of the boundaries.
Yeah.
That's profound.
One of my core beliefs is that boundaries strengthen relationships. And if you don't care about a relationship enough, actually, we probably won't even set boundaries, right? If someone like yells at me in line while I'm getting coffee, I may or may not say anything because I'm like, well, am I going to see this person again? Right. And even if I do express something and they don't acknowledge it, I'm like, well, they're not important to me. So why bother? Right. I could make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's with a family member and that keeps boiling up and it keeps happening over time, yeah, I could end up feeling very resentful and thinking like they're not good for me when really I could have told them, hey, this really bothered me, and see where that conversation can go, see how they respond, and decide what I want to do about it. And one unique thing about boundaries too is that people often think that they have to set it with other people when they can really set boundaries with themselves. And the other party may not even need to know. So if I know that talking to my mom about basketball is a trigger, like we're going to fight about it or whatever, I may not even talk to her. I'll talk to my friends about basketball. And that could be a boundary that I just hold. She doesn't even need to know about it. And we just talk about food or whatever else we want to talk about. And that helps our relationship.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that we have a similar saying, right, in America where good fences make good neighbors. But I guess that goes with just any relationship. The better relationship, sometimes more boundaries you need, anyways, just to protect it for everybody's sake. So I love that. So one of the key risks of not promptly taking care of relationships or dealing with the issues we're talking about here, like the loneliness, the overwhelm, and uh, not feeling like you're able to deal with the parental relationship, is that you might ultimately cut it off, which we don't want to see. What's another consequence that you tend to see, another danger, harm, risk that you see your clients facing?
If people don't address some of these things in excuse me, in their personal life, it also could seep out into other areas of their life, right? Like in your Facebook group, right? They're all professionals. If we don't set boundaries with relationships and we don't think about how that affects us in the long term, imagine if we're not doing that at work or, in our day to day. Like it can cause a lot of financial strains, right? If we're not able to
Mhm.
advocate for ourselves in our career or take risks in creating businesses or doing things that we actually want to do. Because I think for second gens too, a lot of times they get a lot of pressure to have a certain type of career to help support the family, either financially or to fulfill like their parents' dreams as well. So if we want to step away from that, we also need to be able to advocate for ourselves in that sense, in the professional way, either at work or even going after our dreams. So it could affect us more than just the relationships, right? And if we're unhappy in our relationships, our career, then our health is at risk. And that can just be a whole array of like things that we don't want to have to deal with.
Exactly. Wow. So, and have you seen this taking its toll in your clients? Like, I mean, I guess obviously you're talking about it. Like, do you have like a high level, some a really extreme story that you've seen? Like, you can't give too many details. I get it, but like a high level gives us a feel for like how bad can this get?
I think the resentment really builds up, right? Sometimes if we're
Mm,
doing a career that we think was for someone else, and if they haven't, again, going back to knowing themselves, is this actually a career that I am even slightly interested in? To actually take some accountability and some ownership over that decision, that resentment can build up towards the other party, and that can really
mm,
dampen their relationship. And then also how they show up at work, right? If they're just like, well, now everyone like that generalizing of that feeling kind of happens to other people at work too. So when they're able to check in with themselves and really know like what do I really like? Do I want to stay here and know that they have a choice so they can either move on from it or really own that decision, even though part of that decision was influenced by their parents, does that make them feel better? And generally it does. So yeah,
just telling them they have space now to decide whether to continue with it or not.
mhm. Yeah, and
Uh,
also like if there's a pressure from parents sometimes, right? We want to resist it. Even as adults, I think that still happens. So are we resisting this career because our parents influenced us, or did we actually also like this career?
how many times do you end up seeing clients deciding to actually change their career versus like stay with it?
I haven't seen any clients change their careers actually.
Wow, good. I'm
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah.
Well, that's another good example to work with the therapist like Allison sooner than later, just so you can deal with that resentment, deal with that overwhelm, deal with the loneliness, deal with these problems rather than just letting them continue to eat away at you over time.
Yeah. Because I think for second gens too, I think, and any children, like adult children with immigrant parents, oftentimes it can be hard to know what we're feeling, again, because space might not have been created for it, or we've been told certain things so much that it's hard to distinguish if it's our own needs or we're doing it because someone else said it. And if we don't take that time to really kind of dive into it and digest that, right, we can think
Mhm.
that it's all for other people when there might be some for us, like some self-care in there that we haven't acknowledged.
So, is there any other like words of wisdom that you like to share with us? Like any final
Yeah,
key thoughts that we haven't touched on?
we went through a lot. I was trying to think, excuse me, maybe it's more just thinking what's underneath, right? On the
Mm,
surface. So thinking of like an iceberg, what's on the surface that we actually see and what's actually hidden underneath that like no one has dove down into to look at or examine. And that can be for us, it could be for our parents, our families, kind of like the story that you shared, right? Of like not knowing why like everyone's so worried about you climbing trees. Like once you had that little bit of information underneath the iceberg, like that helped provide clarity, maybe more compassion for them and also for yourself for being upset or knowing that
mhm.
like it bothered you. So I think having this visual of the iceberg and knowing there's always more underneath, but once we take care of ourselves and really think about what we need, we can then dive into that and learn more about other people if we want so that our relationships can improve. And then we can make a choice in how we want to live our lives and not have a bunch of feelings of overwhelm and regret.
Love it. Well, I thank you so much for coming. And I love everybody now to have a chance to know how they can find you. And I should have mentioned before, but Allison not only has the therapy practice, but we indicated she's also been, she's founded Unshaken Gens. And this is her um, like course and toolkit that she's making available to anybody anywhere now. And yeah, how can people go about finding this and getting in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can go to heyallisonlee.com, and Lee's spelled Ly, / start, just to see if they want to sign up for. I have a free training on 3 things that we can like start paying attention to with how we talk to ourselves that could be helpful if we're struggling with some of these feelings. And that could be a good place to start to see what we can do about those things we're telling ourselves.
Love it. And likewise, if you're in the mental health space and looking for you have podcasts or anything like that too, I highly recommend Allison too. As you know, she's just so unique in what she does. I think everybody needs to have Allison in a Rolodex to send people to. So
Thank you.
thank you so much for coming on, Allison. And again, I think you're extremely unique, not just who you help, but also the way you do it. And I love the authenticity that you bring in what you do.
Thank you.
So we will see you all now next time in a week, and we wish you a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, Jay. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. I appreciate you being here. Just as a reminder, all information on this is intended to be informational and educational only. Although I am a licensed therapist, I am not your therapist. If you are looking for any medical or mental health services, please reach out to providers local to your area and seek out information that is specific for you. This information is not intended to replace any medical or mental health services that you may benefit from. And I hope that you enjoyed the information that was provided on the show today, and I'll see you on the next episode.